All right. Shalom, shalom, family, and shalom. Peace and greetings to our brothers and sisters of the nation of Israel. We want to give you special thanks for tuning in tonight. As we all know, today is what you would call or normally call Thanksgiving. That's what the whole world is out here celebrating. And what we say here, A.O.I, the hell with that. You know what I'm saying? That's your brothers, that's your family. But before we get started on that, we got to give all praise, all honor, all glory to the Most High God of Israel, the only God, the creator of the heavens and the earth and everything therein. We want to give all praise to him before we do anything. And we, like we say always, it's an honor, it's a privilege to be able to speak and edify you today. And I'm Brother Ananias.
Brother Benaiah.
We are A.O.I, the Awakening of Israel. And today's topic is called Death in the Family, Thanksgiving. And it's a topic that a lot of our brothers and sisters are aware of, and some aren't. You coming into this truth, you're basically what they call in the world, you're wet behind the ears, you're green, you're not understanding what's going on. Just to let you know, just to give you a clue, the so-called Native Indians, the so-called Native Americans, they are your brothers and sisters. They are of the tribe of Gad or Reuben, from the nation of Israel. They are our brothers, our sisters, our family. And by us keeping and celebrating Thanksgiving, what are we doing? By not knowing or understanding what's going on, we celebrating the death of our brothers and sisters.
Right.
And today, we hope to give you some understanding so that you don't continue down that path, so that you have some understanding, so that you start to question the things that you do in life. For so many years, our people have been plagued with ignorance. Just going with word of mouth or traditions of man. When the Lord tells you in the scriptures, don't be deceived by philosophy or traditions of man. Let's prove that right quick. Let's go to Colossians 2:8. Just to prove to you, because the Bible tells you also to prove all things. And since I'm already there, I'll go ahead and read it. This is the book of Colossians, chapter 2, verse 8. And it reads, beware, lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the traditions of man, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. So Thanksgiving is nowhere in the Bible. Celebrating the death of your brothers is not in the Bible.
That's right.
Whether you know it or not, if you do just a little bit of research, you'll find out that that is the enemy celebrating victory over you and your brothers. They are celebrating the downfall of you and the conquering of your people. Just do a little bit of research, you'll find that out. You don't have to do deep, extensive research, but just a little bit. Just ask a couple questions, you'll find the answer. It's right there in front of you. Just like the Bible has always been in front of all of us, we never opened it up and read it though. We just went with word of mouth, following tradition, believing what somebody say without them having to prove anything to you. So what are we doing here today? We're gonna get some history and some more facts and things that you don't know about your people, the so-called Native American, or about the tradition of Thanksgiving. So we're gonna dive into it. And first, I want to show article. But if you got anything you want to add first, brother, go ahead.
You got it, King.
All right. So I'm gonna show you and read to you this article, giving you or dating back to the origin of Thanksgiving. This is on history.com, just like the History Channel. So they've done a bit of research and posted and created a lot of articles just to show you the history. So this is the history of Thanksgiving according to history.com. And it says Thanksgiving Day is a national holiday in the United States. And Thanksgiving 2021 occurs on Thursday, November 25th, which is today. But in 1621, the Plymouth colonists and the Wampanoag shared in autumn harvest feast that was acknowledged today as one of the first Thanksgiving. Now, that's only if you know anything about life. There's three sides to every story. You got the colonists, you got the Wampanoag, and then you got the truth. You know, we can only decipher from the story or from the side of the colonists right now because they are the one in rulership. They are the one who dictate the narrative of everything that go on because they are in charge. You have to dig deep to find the truth on the other side. So they saying that at this particular time in 1621 that they had a harvest together and called it the first Thanksgiving celebration in the colonies. For more than 2 centuries, days of Thanksgiving were celebrated by individual colonies and states. It wasn't until 1863, in the midst of the Civil War, that President Abraham Lincoln proclaimed a national Thanksgiving Day to be held each November. So the first one was done in 1621, and it wasn't made national until 1863. That's damn near 200 years later.
Right.
You know? But the real question we need to be asking ourselves is, why do we even have to celebrate it? You know? Why are we even celebrating Thanksgiving? You know? How do we even get, or how did the Indians or the Native Americans even get onto this side of the earth? You know, because everybody knows that they were here first. Everybody knows that the pilgrims, the colonists, they came from Britain and England to this side of the world. And when they got over here, it was already individuals over here. So the question should be, who was over here? And how did they get here? If everybody else was on the other side of the world, how did they get here? What you don't realize and what they don't teach you is that that's in the Bible as well. And we're going to get that in 2nd Ezra just to prove it to you. 2nd Ezra chapter 13 and verse 40.
All right.
And it will clearly explain to you how the so-called Native American Indians got on this side of the world, as well as the Hispanics. Let's get
It's
that.
the book of 2nd Esdras, chapters 13 and verse 40. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Osea the king, whom Salmanasar, the king of Assyria, led away captive. And he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land.
So it says the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their land, out of the land of Assyria. It was 10 tribes. So whether you know it or not, the kingdom or the nation of Israel was split into two after Solomon went off when he sinned. The kingdom was split into two. You had the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The southern kingdom would be your so-called Hispanics and Native Indians today, you know. And at this particular time, it's saying those 10 tribes were carried away prisoners out of their own land. And if you read in in the beginning of the Bible, it'll tell you how our people went off through sin, through disobedience, where the Lord basically sold us into captivity, sent other nations to come get us, to destroy us, to carry us away captive, you know? So you had the northern tribe and the southern tribe, kingdom. Northern kingdom, southern kingdom. The northern kingdom was sent to the Assyrians, while the southern kingdom was sent to the Babylonians. But while with the Assyrians, these 10 tribes decided to do what? Let's go ahead and finish it.
Verse
41.
41. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt.
Well, what?
Where never mankind dwelt.
So our brothers and sisters were in the Assyrian captivity, and they decided to take counsel amongst themselves and say, let's leave. Now, this wasn't that type of brutal captivity as if we experience on down the road, you know what I'm saying, where we can't do nothing without the enemy permission, or, you know, it's going to be massive bloodshed. But at this particular time, they took counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a country where never mankind dwelt. That's how they got on this side of the world, but we're going to keep reading on that.
Verse 42, that they might keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land.
That they what?
Which they never kept in their own land.
So they decided that they were going to go to this new land where mankind never dwelt, and they're going to start keeping the commandments. Because for them not keeping the commandments in the land that they were in before, the land of Jerusalem, when they didn't keep the commandments, the Lord said you will be flushed out of this land. You will be sold into captivity. Moses told us that in Deuteronomy 28 and 15. You know, matter of fact, let's get the script on that. Let's go to Leviticus 26 and 13.
All right. The book of Leviticus.
Ezra, but let's go to Leviticus 26 and 13.
The book of Leviticus
15.
The book of Leviticus, chapter 26 and verse 13.
Uh-huh.
I am the Lord your God, which brought you forth out of the land of Egypt, that ye should not be their bondmen, and have broken the bands of your yoke, and made you go aright. But if you will not hearken unto me, and will not do all these commandments, and if ye despise my statutes, or if your soul abhor my judgments, so that ye will not do all my commandments, but that ye break my covenant, I will also do this unto you. I will even appoint over you terror, consumption, and a burning Og, that shall consume the eyes, and cause sorrow of heart. And ye shall sow your seed in vain, for your enemies shall eat it.
So we were once in our own land. We broke God's law. We despised his commandments, his statute. So we were going to, what he said, I will also appoint over you terror, consumption. He sent another nation basically to come rid us of our land, to strip us of our land, and to take us into captivity. Appoint terror over us. Another nation was now ruling over us when we were the top nation at that time. But for our disobedience, for us despising the Lord's commandments, another nation came to do what? To be over us, to take us into captivity. So we end up in possession of the Assyrians. We decided we're going to leave the Assyrians and go into another land where never mankind dwelt. And then we're going to start keeping the law. That was the mindset, which is backwards. But that's what we were trying to do, But let's go back to 2nd Ezra just to finish out how we got over to this side of the world.
The book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 13 and verse 43. And they entered into the Euphrates by the narrow passage of the river. For the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over.
You see that? They went traveling through the river, and the Most High held the flood, showing signs and wonders for them. Go ahead.
For through that country there was a great way to go, namely a year and a half.
You see that? We were in our homeland is Jerusalem. So to come all the way from Jerusalem to this side of the world, that's quite a bit of a distance. That's a long journey. Read that part again, 45.
Verse 45. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half.
Now you understand that we didn't have cars. We wasn't on no boats. We as a people, 10 tribes, were trying to come to a land never where mankind dwelt before. So it said it was a far country. There was a way to go, namely a year and a half. It took us over a year to get over here. Keep going.
For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half. And the same region is called Arzareth.
You see that? That's what North America or the whole American or the Western Hemisphere is called, Arzareth. It wasn't called America. It wasn't called South or Central America or Canada or North America or Brazil or none of that. It was called Arzareth. So we just learned how our brothers and sisters of the 10 tribes, or how the so-called Native Americans or Hispanics, how they got on this side of the world. They basically walked, and the Lord held the floods back so they can walk across. Understand that. The Lord works in mysterious ways through marvelous works for our people, for the nation of Israel, and for the nation of Israel only. If you read the Bible, you'll understand that. But let's go back to this article I was reading earlier, just to give you a little bit more insight. It says Thanksgiving at Plymouth. In September 1620, a small ship called the Mayflower left Plymouth, England, carrying 102 passengers. And an assortment of religious separatists seeking a new home where they could freely practice their faith, and other individuals lured by the promise of prosperity and land ownership in a new world. You see that in that small little paragraph, you can grab a lot of information out of that. It said it was a ship with 102 passengers with an assortment of different religious separatists. That's a variation of different religions coming on a boat right there. And that gives you an answer as to how come or why we have so many different religions here in America. They came on the boat, different religions, seeking a new home where they could spread their wings and fly, so to speak. It said, and they were lured here by the promise of prosperity. What do the preachers and pastors teach here in America? Prosperity. That's all they teach and talk about. And land ownership in the new world. Think about that. It said, after a treacherous and uncomfortable crossing that lasted 66 days. So it took these folk, these heathens, over 2 months to get over here on boat. 66 days, they dropped anchor near the tip of Cape Cod, far north of their intended destination at the mouth of the Hudson River. Now we talking about the Pilgrims. We ain't talking about the Spaniards that made it over here first. We talking about the Pilgrims, the so-called Europeans. It says they dropped anchor near the tip of Cape Cod, far north of their intended destination at the mouth of the Hudson River. 1 month later, the Mayflower crossed Massachusetts Bay, where the Pilgrims, as they are now commonly known, began the work of establishing a village at Plymouth. So you see this picture right here. This is one of the most common pictures that you'll see on the internet, as well as what happened to it? One of those pictures that you'll see in your history books at school showing the Pilgrims basically feeding the Indians. Now, what kind of foolishness is that? When after we read this, you'll think to yourself, how could they even paint a picture like this? Now it says, throughout the first brutal winter, most of the colonists remained on board the ship. Where they suffered from exposure, scurvy, and outbreaks of contagious disease. So they couldn't even get off the boat. They already crossing the ocean and they diseased. They contagious with different diseases. Only half of the Mayflower original passengers and crew lived to see their first New England spring. Only half of that 102. The rest of them died from sickness and disease. Think about that. In March, the remaining settlers moved ashore, where they received an astonishing visit from the members of the Abenaki tribe, who greeted them in English. Now, you would wonder how in the world they were able to greet them in English, but we'll get into that later on. It says several days later, he returned, the Abenaki man, or member of the Indian tribe who greeted the English. It says several days later, he returned with another Native American, Squanto. Everybody, majority of people have heard of Squanto before. It says a member of the Pawtuxet tribe, I might have said that wrong, but you know what I'm getting at, who had been kidnapped by an English sea captain and sold into slavery before escaping to London and returning to his homeland on an exploratory expedition. So this was one of the Native Americans who was captured and sold into slavery, and he escaped and made it back across the ocean. And he said, taught the Pilgrims, weakened by malnutrition and illness, how to cultivate corn. So they didn't cross the ocean through their so-called great navigational skills, but they don't know how to grow corn. They don't know how to survive on the land. That goes to show you a lot of things if you just pay attention and at what goes on in this so-called American society. Because them same pilgrims are the same ones that don't know how to put no work in today. They'll come up with a plan, but they expect us to put it into effect. Said how to cultivate corn, extract sap from maple trees, catch fish in the rivers, and avoid poisonous plants. So they ain't even know how to fish. And you know they wrote this article. We didn't write this article. It said how to cultivate corn. They didn't know how to do that. How to extract sap from the maple trees. They didn't know how to do that. Catch fish. They didn't know nothing about fishing in the river and avoid poisonous plants. He also helped the settlers forge an alliance with the Wampanoag, a local tribe which would endure for more than 50 years and tragically remains one of the sole examples of harmony between European colonists and Native Americans. Now, how can you say would endure for 50 years and then say tragically in the same sentence? If they forged an alliance, that makes no sense. They must not have been doing righteousness. They must not have been dealing in brotherly love like they try to present in their pictures and photos and celebrations. It says in 1621, my bad, after the Pilgrims' first corn harvest proved successful, Governor William Bradford organized a celebratory feast and invited a group of the fledgling colony's Native American allies, including the Wampanoag chief Massasoit, now remembered as America's first Thanksgiving. Although the Pilgrims themselves may not have used the term at the time, the festival lasted for 3 days. While no record exists of the first Thanksgiving exact menu, much of what we know about what happened at the first Thanksgiving comes from Pilgrim chronicler Edward Winslow, who wrote. So they don't even know what they ate, but they going off what this man wrote in his letter. And today, everybody eating turkey, hams, stuffing with cranberry sauce, mac and cheese, greens. You got your devil eggs. You got your cheese, your cheddar biscuits. You know, your burnt bacon, your ham hocks, your turkey legs. You know what I'm saying? It said our harvest began being gotten in. Our governor sent for men on fowling, that so we might, after a special manner, rejoice together after we had gathered the fruits of our labor. They 4 in one day killed as much as fowl as with a little help besides served the company almost a week. In which time among their recreation we exercised our arms. So what is that showing you right there? They ate good and then they out there busting off or exercising their arms, shooting their rifles off. Say they exercise our arms. Many of the Indians coming amongst us and amongst the rest, their great king Massasoit, with some 90 men, whom for 3 days we entertained and feasted. And they went out and killed 5 deer, which they brought to the plantation and bestowed on our governor and upon the captain and others. Although it be not always so plentiful as it was at this time with us, yet by the goodness of God, we are so far from want that we often wish you partakers of plenty. So that letter didn't even explain what they were eating besides deer. So where did you get the turkey from? Where did you get the pumpkin pies from? You know? It says historians have suggested that many of the dishes were likely prepared using traditional Native American spices and cooking methods. So once again, they got to come to the nation of Israel to learn how to cook, just like it is today. You go to their restaurants, who in there cooking? Us. You know, where do they get their methods, their pies, and their recipes from? Us. They steal them from us and they put their face on it to get the credit. But this is a perfect example right here. It says because the Pilgrims had no oven and the Mayflower sugar supply had dwindled by the fall of 1621, The meal did not feature pies, cakes, or other desserts, which had become a hallmark of contemporary celebrations. You see that foolishness? So where do we get the foods that we eat today? Why are we so gung-ho about getting a turkey when they didn't even use it? They ate a deer. They ate deer. They went out hunting for turkeys. They were eating deer at their Thanksgiving, their first meal. They didn't have pies and cakes. So where we get that from? Think about that. It said Pilgrim held their second Thanksgiving celebration in 1623 to mark the end of a long drought that had threatened the year's harvest and prompted Governor Bradford to call for a religious fast. Now, why would they be fasting? Why did they even come on this side of the world? Because they read the Bible. They read the book, the same scripture we just brought out to show you how the Native Americans got to this side of the world. They read that and they realized that there's people on this side of the world. So they were reading our book and they decided that they, throughout time, I forgot damn, brother, you remember the name of the guy that declared that they were going to do basically take on our customs, Judaism.
You talking about in the Greeks?
Yeah, Judaism. I forgot his name. Okay. But by this time, they had basically converted over, trying to keep.
Oh, the Ashkenazi Jews.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
They basically read our book, read our history, and tried to convert over to do so. That's why they said they called for a religious fast. No other nation has fast. But you got various other religions that hold fast because they took after our customs. It says days of fasting and Thanksgiving on an annual or occasional basis became common practice in other New England settlements as well. You see that? They pass it on to the other states, cities, villages, colonies for them to fast as well. It says during the American Revolution, the Continental Congress designated one or more days of Thanksgiving a year. And in 1789, George Washington issued the first Thanksgiving proclamation by the national government of the United States. In it, he called upon Americans to express their gratitude for the happy conclusion to the country's war of independence and the successful ratification of the U.S. Constitution. So at this particular time, it didn't have nothing to do with the bond that was made between the Pilgrims and the so-called Indians. He talking about celebrate the country's independence and the completion of the U.S. Constitution. Said his successors, John Adams and James Madison, also designated days of thanks during their presidencies. In 1817, New York became the first of several states to officially adopt an annual Thanksgiving holiday. Each celebrated it on a different day. However, in the American South remained largely unfamiliar with the tradition. So in the 1800s, Thanksgiving was just an up north thing. It wasn't even being celebrated in the South. But in today's society, it's one of the biggest things to be celebrated in the South. Says in 1827, the noted Manager magazine editor and prolific writer Sarah Joseph Hale, author among countless other things of the nursery rhyme Mary Had a Little Lamb. You know what? When I was reading this the other day, preparing for this, I thought about it as soon as I read this. It said Mary Had a Little Lamb. Now, what could they be really referencing with the title of this song?
Mm-hmm.
Christ's mom's name was Mary, and she had a little lamb. Christ was the Lamb of God. Mary had a little lamb. And all you got to do is read through some of the lyrics, and it'll make you think a little bit. But to carry on, it said she launched a campaign to establish Thanksgiving as a national holiday. For 36 years, she published numerous editorials and sent scores of letters to the governors, senators, presidents, and other politicians, earning her the nickname the Mother of Thanksgiving. So for 36 years, this woman was writing letters to the politicians, trying to get them to make Thanksgiving a national holiday. Abraham Lincoln finally heeded her request in 1863. Once again, that's almost 200 years later after the very first one in 1621. And it says her request in 1863 at the height of the Civil War. So during the Civil War, this is one of the tricks or one of the schemes that Abraham Lincoln used to try to smooth over the war, smooth over the things that were going on at the time, to try to reunite the country. But this is the time where our country was going to war with each other, or they were. Not our country. It ain't my country. It ain't my wrestling plate. It's not ours. But in a proclamation, entreating all Americans to ask God to commend to his tender care of all those who have become widows, orphans, mourners, or sufferers in the lamentable civil strife, and to heal the wounds of the nation. He scheduled Thanksgiving for the final Thursday in November. So that would be the fourth Sunday in November. And it was celebrated on that day every year until 1939. So it was put together and celebrated on the fourth Thursday of every year because of Abraham Lincoln. Up until 1939, when Franklin D. Roosevelt moved the holiday up a week. Pay attention to this. He moved it up a week in an attempt to spur retail sales during the Great Depression. Just like if you pay attention to the things that they do in these stores or in the retail market today, just say Christmas, they'll start putting out Christmas decorations in September. You know, just like what Franklin D. Roosevelt was doing. He moved it up in an attempt to spur retail sales. They do that with all the holidays. Right now, you can probably go in the store in Walgreens or CVS and find some damn Valentine stuff sitting out on the shelf. You know, that's how they do. That's how they operate. It's all about money, riches. But let's keep reading. It said Roosevelt's plan, known derivatively as Franksgiving, was met with passionate opposition. And in 1941, the president reluctantly signed a bill making Thanksgiving the fourth Thursday in November. So there you go, how or why we celebrate Thanksgiving on the fourth Thursday of November every year. Or not we, but why they. And the reason why, it has nothing to do with the tradition or the so-called bond that was made between the enemy, the Native Indians and the Pilgrims, Well, it can go into various different things that they do, from Macy Day parades, different shopping, Black Friday, you got all kind of different things. But you got something you want to add so far, bro?
Just kind of going into I'll be going into the end. So if you got some stuff still in the beginning, you can keep going.
Let me switch over to this to the conquistadors, because like I stated beforehand, the Pilgrims didn't get over into the Americas until 1620. And our brothers and sisters, the so-called Native Americans, we were already here, or they were already here, And the first so-called white man to come over here was the Spaniards, the conquistadors. They came over here in the 1400s, the late 1400s, through South America, through Central America, and a little bit of North America. And let's look at it and see what a conquistador is. It's the meaning is a conqueror. They were the invaders, knights, soldiers, and explorers of the Spanish and Portuguese empires. During the Age of Discovery, conquistadors sailed beyond Europe to the Americas, Oceania, Africa, and Asia, colonizing and exploiting territory and opening trade routes. So when you look at this and you read it, you be like, okay, they did some pretty good things, making history. But us brothers and sisters in this truth, we got to start doing a little bit of research, as we stated beforehand. In a word like colonization, let's read the definition right quick. It says colonization refers to large-scale population movements where the migrants maintain strong links with their ancestors, former country, gaining significant privileges over the inhabitants of the territory. By such links, when colonization takes place under the protection of colonies. But I can look up another definition of it, but colonization is basically coming into another person's land, taking the resources and inflicting your law on those people, you know. And that's how you got the English uh, persuasion over this way, as well as the Spanish and the French, because these different nations or different cultures came over here exploiting and taking the resources from the so-called Americas and claiming different territories and putting their own laws into effect and opening up trade routes. And they call it colonialism, but it's really terrorism. The real word for terrorism, coming in, taking over somebody else's land and enforcing your own rules. And if they ain't willing to get down, they're going to lay down, for another lack of a better word, And they came with their different religions and their different philosophies and doctrines, inflicting them on the people that were already here, But it said, let me keep going. After arrival in the West Indies in 1492, the Spanish, usually led by hidalgos from the west and south of Spain, began building an American empire in the Caribbean using islands such as Espanol. Okay, I didn't think you could see it. All right. Where am I at? Building an American empire in the Caribbean using islands such as Espanol, Cuba, and Puerto Rico as bases, just like they do today. They in every country, and they got a damn embassy everywhere. But it says from 1519 to 1521, Hernan Cortez waged a campaign against the Aztec Empire. Those are our brothers and sisters, ruled by Montezuma II. Now, when I was reading this article as well, I was blown away. And like I said before, when you do just a little bit of research, you'll start to find out things that they try to conceal or hide from you. You can hover over this and it talks about Montezuma. And I remember hearing stories growing up, about when you take trips to Mexico or down south, below the border, say don't drink the water because of Montezuma's revenge. So I'm looking at Montezuma. I look at the brother picture over here, and I don't know if y'all can see it too well or not, but this is a picture or a depiction of Montezuma II. I'm looking at it, and I'm looking down here at the bottom of his garments, and I see the fringes. I said, wow, this is truly one of the Israelite brothers and sisters. I mean, one of the nation of Israel. How do I know that? Because it's a law commanding the brothers and sisters or the nation of Israel to put fringes in the borders of their garments, laced with a ribbon of blue. And you can find that in Numbers chapter 15, verse 38. So I'm looking at this picture and I'm like, wow, this is a complete depiction of our brother wearing fringes, letting you know that he was a member of the nation of Israel. He wasn't a so-called, he wasn't no Native American. He wasn't no Aztec. That's just what they called him, But they were fighting against Montezuma, and that plague or that revenge that I was talking about with the water. Let's read a little bit on that as well. It says Montezuma's revenge. I just typed that in because that's all I could remember from my youth. But it says name for Montezuma or Montezuma II, the last Aztec ruler before the empire was conquered by the Spanish, the condition is seen as retribution, meaning a payback for the slaughter and enslavement of the Aztec people by the Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortez on 13th of August, 1521. So they say that Montezuma's revenge is diarrhea experienced by tourists after drinking water or eating food in Mexico as a result of a bacteria strain to which native Mexicans are immune. So every time somebody get ready to take a trip to Mexico or down below the border, they'll tell you don't drink the water. You know, bring your own water or bring your own drinks or whatever the case may be. But basically letting you know that Montezuma was an Israelite. You know, those are our brothers and sisters. And once again, it said it was a retribution to the enslavement and the conquering of our people, the slaughter and enslavement of the Aztec people by the Spanish. So this is something that is done for revenge because the so-called white man, Spaniards, came over here looking for the resources like they always do in colonization and slaughter the people and try to inflict their law, in which they succeeded at doing. Why? Because that is their blessing. That's what Isaac blessed Esau with in the beginning. He said you would be blessed with the sword, you know. So they come in and they take over the land and take over and inflict their laws and their pain as well. So what we were doing right there was just basically letting our brothers and sisters know that Thanksgiving is not what it seems to be. In fact, it's celebrating the slaughter of our brothers and sisters, the nation of Israel. We went into these different nations, we being attacked and slaughtered for our disobedience as a people. We need to come back to keeping these laws, statutes, and commandments, keep pushing forward, you know. And like I said, we were breaking the commandments for the most part. What type of commandments were we breaking, though? That's the question, you know. And I'm going to show you a quick clip as to why we went into captivity. Because these are the things that the so-called Native Americans or Hispanic man was doing, the Aztecs, the Mayans. These are some of the things that they were doing, you know, to go into captivity or to have these different things happen to them. Check this video out. This is from the movie Apocalypto, and this is at the very beginning of the movie. And you'll see exactly what they were doing. They caused our people to go down that road of being slaughtered or enslaved. You see that? Idolatry. They know that it's a God, but they offering human sacrifice to the Most High God. You know they are people because they working off of temples. Where do they get the idea of the temples? from Egypt, where we came from, where we were freed from. Egypt. So they came when they traveled to another land, to a land where mankind never dwelt before. They went over here practicing the same things that they were doing beforehand, building temples, sacrificing, but they were sacrificing to a God that they had forgot about, basically. They ain't had the books because they wouldn't be doing that. But they remember they used to sacrifice to their God. But they doing it with their own brothers and sisters, and the Lord is against it. You know, we used to sacrifice animals, you know, but they taking our hearts and chopping our heads, you know. And because of that, the Lord punished us, you know. Let's get Deuteronomy 28:25 right quick. Because these brothers and sisters thinking they doing something righteous, trying to, I think he was saying something about renewing the land with your blood, you know. You got that? Deuteronomy 28:25. Your mic muted.
Yeah, I was gonna kind of jump into some of the curses and kind of explain basically what you're going into right now.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. You still want me to get that for you?
Yeah.
All right. Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 25. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them, and shall flee 7 ways before them. And
It's
thou shalt
28
be.
and 28, 28, 20. I wrote the wrong one down.
You said
No,
25.
that's it. 28, 25. Hit that again.
Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 25. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and shall be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth.
So, because of their idolatry, the Lord said you're going to be smitten before your enemies. That's why they had to go through so many wars. That's why there is a Montezuma's revenge, because our people were slain, enslaved. A lot of the different tribes of Indians that you hear about, the Cherokee, the Apache, the Comanche, the Iroquois, all these different tribes of Indians, so-called Native American Indians, they were smitten before their enemies because they were practicing idolatry, you know. And it said, thou shalt go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them, and shall be removed, meaning sold into slavery, into all kingdoms of the earth. So that's how you got the Dominicans in the islands, the Jamaicans. You know, we scattered into all the nations through slavery. You know,
That's
but
right.
it's breaking God's commandment. You know, read 28 for me right quick. 28, 28.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 28. The
Mm-hmm.
Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart.
Lord, smite them with madness. They thinking that what they were doing in that video clip I just showed, that they were doing something righteous. Nah, but that's madness. You taking your own people, stretching them out in front of everybody, and snatching their heart out, burning the heart and chopping their head off. What could you possibly be doing righteous with it? What good is gonna come out of it? You know? But that's madness, you know, astonishment of heart. Your heart, like we always say in the Bible, is talking about your mind. Astonishment. At one point in time, they were kings, royalty. Now, the way that video portrayed them, they out there living like savages, you know, offering each other up. They got the damn bull horns in the noses, teeth all around hanging out their ears, looking like savages, you know. But our people went into these different things from idolatry, you know. And if you want to elaborate on some more of them curses, you can go ahead.
Okay. So like the brother going into, right, he introducing to how the so-called Native Americans got over here. Said they went through the narrow of the Euphrates River, right? Because they used to be in Jerusalem, but then they went into captivity under the Assyrians, and they decided that they're gonna go and keep the commandments that they never kept in their own land. These were the type of things they were doing over in these other countries, following false doctrines, following false religions. And then they said they was going to come over here and keep the commandments. But we understand that that didn't happen, right? Because they came over here still in idolatry, still in wickedness, right? And the Lord put it on us, right? Because He told us that if we break these commandments, that we would go into captivity, that we would be the bottom of the earth, we would be the tail of the people, right? We would be the least of all the nations, right? But basically, what I want to get into, right, is hey, if you're celebrating Christmas, you're celebrating white supremacy. You're celebrating the extortion of your people, right? That's what you're going into. That's what you're celebrating, right? You have to come out of celebrating these things, right? That's actually a sin when you're celebrating that because that's going against the Most High God, right? Why would the Lord set up a holiday celebrating the death of His people,
Mm.
right? The Lord wouldn't do that to His people, the Israelites, right? He wouldn't do that. He put the other nations over us because of our disobedience, right? But first, I'm gonna get Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 15, and it reads, "But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all His commandments and His statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee." So a lot of people have heard this by now that you're an Israelite, right? You've heard the curses of Deuteronomy 28. You've heard it in verse 15, Moses prophesied that we would be cursed as a people if we didn't listen to the commandments. Well, if we didn't do them, rather, right? I'm gonna skip to verse 48. This is Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 46, rather. "And they shall be upon thee for a sign and upon and they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever." It's talking about those curses, right? But I'm gonna show a page out of a book called "The Indian Slavery." Right? If y'all can see this, let me see. All right, can you see that, brother?
No.
Okay, 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 okay. Let me share my screen with me. Bear with me for a minute. I'm about to get that up right now. So we're pulling out of a page of a book in the book called Indian Slavery. Can you see that now?
Yeah. Blow it
All
up a
right.
little bit.
Okay. So this is the book we're pulling out of, right? Sometimes you got to dive into a little history, right? You got to dive into the history because hey, the Bible is a history book,
That's
right?
right.
It has archaeology in it, right? It has different maps in it, right? Different nations' whereabouts. Hey, so you got to kind of dive in that thing, right? So this is Indian slavery, right? And this is on page 13, talking about the so-called Native Americans, talking about Reuben, who are the Dominicans, right? We're talking about the Puerto Ricans. We're talking about the Northern Kingdom who went into idolatry, right? So I'm gonna read this, right? Right where my mouse is, and it says, in writing of Florida, he declared it his belief that the Indians can never be made submissive and become Christians. So he advocated that they all be taken, placed on ships, and scattered throughout the various islands, and even on the Spanish main, where they might be sold as His Majesty sells his vessels to the Grandes in Spain. So just like we went into slavery on slave ships, hey, the Native Americans, right? So-called Native Americans, they went into slavery as well on slave ships, right? They went to Europe, Russia. That's why you look on TV and you see Native Americans over there in Australia, right? These are the things that happen to us as a people, and it was prophesied in the Bible for our disobedience that we would go into slavery, right? But first, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a minute. So now I'm gonna go to Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 68, showing our people that we are the ones who got scattered, right? First, I'm gonna jump to 64. It says, "And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone." So we got on those slave ships and we got scattered throughout all over the earth, throughout the Spanish main, right? Throughout the islands of Jamaica, right? Throughout the islands of Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, right? We got scattered Hey, in Honduras,
Mm-hmm.
right? Our people are everywhere, man. We like the sand of the sea. And the Lord told us that we would go into captivity if we didn't keep his commandments. That's why now we have to come back to him so these curses can be reversed on the other nations, right? This is Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again. So the first time we was in Egypt, we were in slavery, as we know, right? But he said, I'm gonna bring you into Egypt again, which means slavery, which means bondage again with ships. We just read in the book, hey, the Native Americans also went into slavery on slave ships, showing you so-called blacks who's celebrating Thanksgiving with your turkey in your hand right now, right? And your cranberry sauce on the side. You need to put that down and stop
That's right.
celebrating the death of your forefathers, right? We lining the history up, showing you, hey, these are your people. They went through the same curses as you, right? So why would we be celebrating those holidays that are set up by your enemy who also enslaved you,
Mm.
right? We have to leave white supremacy. You have to leave white Jesus, right? Thanksgiving, that's pretty much equivalent to white Jesus, man. They came over here with that image and Christianity telling our people that they were hey, to love your neighbor as yourself. That's what they told us when they came here. With a whip in their hand and a sword behind their back, right?
Mm.
It says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondman and bondwoman, and no man shall buy you. And no man has saved us since we've been over here, right? But let me jump to Lamentations chapter 4 and verse 17, right? Lamentations chapter 4 and verse 17. And some of these are some classical precepts, all right? But this is going into the northern kingdom as to how they fell, right? The brother just showed you some of the history going into how they fell, right? How another nation came and slaughtered them, right? And then created a feast out of it, right? But these are the Native Americans in the Bible, right? These are the so-called, well, this is the northern kingdom in the Bible. Lamentations chapter 4 and verse 17. It says, as for us, our eyes have yet failed for our vain help. In our watching, we have watched for a nation that could not save us. Right? We sitting out, we going out to vote, right? We going out our way to work for the so-called white man, right? Building a nation up, right? And we watching for a nation that ain't gonna save us, man. You
Mm-hmm.
sitting there waiting for him to come and give you liberation in your Native American communities or your so-called black communities. Hey, you got liberation in the Bible. Hey,
Mm.
read it, man.
That's right.
It's gonna free your mindset, man. It's gonna free you out of those chains, man. Read that. Okay. Verse 18. They hunt our steps that we cannot go in our streets. Our end is near. Our days are fulfilled, for our end is come. Hey, and the end has come, man. The rulership, right? Hey, we went out of rulership under the Moors, man. When we were the Moors, right? 1492. Right? Hey, that's when that was when it was all said and done, man. Now we don't even know who we are. Now we
Mm.
think Negroes in America, right? Hey, and some of our people still think we're Moors. Hey, the word Moor means black. Hey, so go deeper than that, man. Find out who you are. You are Israelite, man.
That's right.
Verse 19. Our persecutors are swifter than eagles of the heaven. They pursued us upon the mountains. They laid wait for us in the wilderness. Right? So let me go to Lamentation chapter 5 and verse 2, right? So the persecutors, they were swifter than eagles, man. Hey, that's the Lord is telling you who the persecutors are. That symbol of America is an eagle. That symbol for the Spaniards who came, the conquistadors who came and conquered Puerto Rico and all the various islands and all of our people in the northern kingdom, hey, their symbol was the eagle. So the Lord is literally letting you know as an Israelite man or woman, right? He's giving you context clues as to who you are, right? Revealing these secrets and these mysteries to you that no other man has access to, right? But the Israelites, right? The ones who repent and keep his commandments, because we know that's how you get to understand it, right? Lamentation chapter 5 and verse 2. Our inheritance is turned to strangers, our houses to aliens, right?
Mm.
And they telling our people, they telling the so-called Mexicans, they aliens, man. They was over here first.
That's right.
Man, go look up old maps, man, and see how big so-called Mexico was, man. Right? It stretched all the way to the damn to the northeast, right? All the way to the southern states, Mississippi. It was everywhere, man. They had the whole land, man, before they came over here. Then they so-called colonized it, right?
Hmm.
With colonialism, basically coming over here and taking the land, right? And we always say they took the land, right? We understand they fought, but guess what? They had treaties, they had legal agreements, they had hundreds of them, man. So this is why we always say, hey, they stole this land. This is not their land, right? They lied to get this land. They cut backs out to get this land, right? They rioted to get this land, right? This is Lamentation chapter 5 and verse 3. We are orphans and fatherless. Our mothers are as widows, right? Hey, and our people, they orphans now, man, because we know we going through the curses. We know the fact the father is leaving the household according to Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 54, right? We have drunken our water for money. Our wood is sold unto us. And the so-called natives, man, they're we have drunken our water for money, right? The water that we drink now, we have to buy that, man. This whole land was ours, right? We were here first, but now our water is being sold unto us. You got to pay a water bill, right? You got to pay all these different water bills, light bills. Right now, your wood is sold unto you. Now you got to go to them to build your house. Now you got to go to them to build to your Lowe's and Home Depot. They cutting your trees down and selling it right back to you, right?
That's
But
why.
I'm gonna go to Ezekiel chapter 37. But first, I'm gonna pull up another article real quick, just expounding on. Can you see my screen, brother?
Yes, sir.
Just expounding on, hey, the so-called Northern Kingdom, who are the Native Americans, the Puerto Ricans, the Mexicans. Hey, these are your people. You understand?
Hey, blow it up some more.
Okay. So this is. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the Trail of Tears, right? And you kind of get it as I read. So in 1838 and in 1839, as a part of Andrew Jackson's Indian removal policy, the Cherokee Nation was forced to give up lands east of the Mississippi River and to migrate to an area in present-day Oklahoma. The Cherokee people call the journey the Trail of Tears because of the devastating effects. The migrants faced hunger, disease, and exhaustion. On force, on the forced march, over 4,000 out of 15,000 of the Cherokees died. And right, and we already know, hey, it was probably more than that, man. You know, Esau, they like to act funny with those numbers, man. They don't want you to be mad about it, so they kind of put you right back to sleep. And you got your average black man, right? The so-called coons. They like, oh, well, 4,000 wasn't that bad. Well, 15,000 wasn't that bad. Hey, man, you a coon, man, and you got to repent,
That's right.
right? Hey, these are your people. Hey, put that damn turkey down, man. Okay. So I got another little article I'm gonna show you. All right. So I'm gonna read right here, and it says the racial tension that led to the Tulsa mass. Okay, all right. Let me explain my point before I read this. My point is that in the Black Wall Street, right, in the bombings of those people, we all know about that. That happened in 1921. The Native Americans were also there with us. I read that article to show you that the Trail of Tears pushed them up into Oklahoma, right? Where the so-called blacks and the Native Americans, right? The chosen people of God, the Israelites, they were there together. It says the racial tension that led to the Tulsa race massacre of 1921 did not begin in 1921. They began decades before the city of Tulsa and the state of Oklahoma were formed. Right?
That's
Hey, telling you, showing you the so-called white man, right? The so-called Edomites, they've been had a hatred towards us. It says that history includes the so-called Indian removal of Native Americans living east of Mississippi River, including what was known then as the five civilized tribes. That term referred to the five Native American nations, which included Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, Muskogee, and Seminole. A significant number of Native people made this trek along the Trail of Tears and eventually settled in what was known as Indian Territory, right? Part of which resides in areas of present-day Oklahoma, including Tulsa. So they was there in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They were
Mm.
the one they helped build Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street as we know it. And if you don't know about that, hey, look up Black Wall Street, man. They got videos on it, right? It's showing you airplanes flying over, bombing our people, shooting our
Mhm.
people in the streets, right? Over a lot, right? It says part of which resides in areas of present-day Oklahoma, including Tulsa. It is in the territory that forcibly relocated Native Americans were eventually allocated land to cultivate along with their former slaves.
Mm.
You see that? Hey, they were there. We was there together, man. So hey, you gotta stop hating on your brothers and sisters. Hey, brother, you brothers in California, man, you gotta stop hating the so-called Mexicans. Hey, you gotta come. You gotta kind of come together. The Lord told us to gather together in these last days, man.
That's right.
Right. So let me get. I'm gonna show you one last little thing that was written right by Bob Blackburn. Okay. So it says, so those were the state Negroes, as they would have said at that time, blending in with the territorial Negroes, who are the former slaves and descendants who have this two or three, now almost four generations of life among Indians in that territory. And so you get this blending of different cultures, right? So, but we know, hey, this is the same culture, man. These are the same people. We know that the so-called blacks and Native Americans, these are the same people, right? But he said it was a blending of the cultures. But a lot of times, and you can look this up in history, like during the civil rights movement, it was more popular to be black around that time. So you had a lot of Native Americans who actually looked like us. They were claiming to be black. So a lot of that history of them being natives to this land, hey, it kind of got washed away. A lot of you black people walking around here, hey, some of a lot of you are so-called Native Americans. Some of you might be Gadites, man, with woolly hair. Some of you might be Dominicans, hey, and you don't even know it. You kind of look through your history, you know, right? And I'm gonna get one more scripture, right? This is Ezekiel chapter 37, right? And my point tonight is, man, hey, we got to come back to being one nation. Come back. Hey, stop celebrating the death of your forefathers. Stop celebrating the death of your foremothers, right? And worshiping another nation,
Mm.
right? This is Ezekiel chapter 37 and verse 15. The word of the Lord came again unto me, saying, moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick and write upon it for Judah and for the children of Israel, his companions. So it said, take the stick and write upon it Judah. And notice it said write upon it, right? Right. You got to kind of look at that now, right? It says write upon it for Judah and his companions. And we know that Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, hey, those are the companions, those are the Jews. And it says of Israel, his companions. Then take another stick and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, for all of the house of Israel, his companions. And we know that Joseph was one of the 12 tribes, right? And we know that Ephraim came from Joseph. You had Ephraim and Manasseh, right? Ephraim got chosen over Manasseh. He is the leader of the northern kingdom. And so a lot of times when you see the word Joseph in the Bible or the word Ephraim in this Bible, it's talking about the northern kingdom, right? So now it's talking about, hey, it said right upon it for Ephraim and his companions, right? So you got Ephraim, Manasseh, you got Asher, right? And the list goes on for the northern kingdom. Verse 17, and join them one another into one stick, and they shall become one in thine hand. Right. So you look at these 12, the 12 tribes sign, right, that we have, right? I might have that still. Can you still see my screen, brother?
Yeah.
All right. You look at the 12 tribe sign that we have, right? You got Judah, Benjamin, Levi. This is the stick that the Lord is talking about. And he said, write upon it. Hey, what is a stick, man? Where does paper come from? Hey, he told you to write upon it. Okay. Verse 17, and join them one to another into one stick, and they shall become one in thine hand. And when the children of thy people shall speak unto thee, saying, wilt thou not show us what thou meanest by these? So when we out teaching in the street, that's what our people ask us. Hey, what does that sign mean right here? What is this right here? Or we ask them the question, hey, do you know what this means? Right? So now they asking, hey, show us what this means. Verse 19, say unto them, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, all right, because we know Ephraim is the leader of the northern kingdom, and the tribe of Israel his fellow, and I will put them with him, even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in mine hand. And the sticks whereupon thou writest shall be in thine hand before their eyes. So, hey, we wrote upon those sticks, right? And say unto them, thus said the Lord God, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and I will gather them on every side and will bring them into their own land. So the Lord is going to come back and bring us into our own land. But first, we got to repent. First, we got to come out of these wicked ways. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, right? Eating pork, right? Shaving your beard off, right? Being a whore, being a whoremonger. We got to come out of these ways. Verse 22, and I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all, and they shall be no more two nations, neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms anymore at all. So we're going to become one nation again, right? The Lord told us to gather together. He told us to love our brothers and our sisters, right? So we got to come together, man. And the Lord literally is going to come and get us. And one king, right, which is Christ, is going to be over us. And we ain't going to be two nations. It ain't going to be no more calling each other Mexicans, right? Calling each other Argentinians, right? Calling each other Colombians. It's not going to be no more of that, right? We're going to be the children of Israel. We're going to get our power back, right? Verse 23, neither shall they defile themselves anymore with their idol. And the brother showed you how we defiled ourselves with idols, man, right? We don't necessarily, well, I ain't gonna say that because some people might do that, but we not really, people are not really sacrificing people anymore, right? They're sacrificing, um, they're
Chickens and goats.
sacrificing, so what?
Chickens and goats.
Right, the sacrificing chicken and goats, right? When we know Christ is the lamb the sacrifice now, right? But now you do have the women who get abortions who sacrifice their kids, right? So if you've been getting abortions, right, the Lord can forgive you for that, but hey, don't do it no more, right? Hey, sister, if you think about getting an abortion, hey, don't do that, man. That's sacrifice. Neither shall they defile themselves any more with their idols, nor with their detestable things, nor with any of their transgressions. But I will save them out of all their dwelling places, wherein they have sinned, and will cleanse them. So shall they be my people, and I will be their God. And when you reading this, man, right? That's why the people, the Christians, right? They don't understand what's going on in the New Testament. The Lord told us He gonna save us out of our own land, right? He gonna be our God, right? It says, and David, my servant, shall be king over them, and they all shall have one shepherd. They shall also walk in my judgments and observe my statutes and do them. Right? That's why we got to keep striving to the end. The Lord said He gonna increase you in your last days, man. Then eventually, hey, He gonna put it in your mind to automatically be righteous, right? So, hey, we're not gonna be sinning no more as a people. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Jacob my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt, and they shall dwell therein, even they and their children. and their children's children forever. And my servant David shall be their prince forever. And we know that, hey, that David, that's talking about Christ, right? That's why they call him the seed of David, the son of David, right? It's prophesying about Christ being the ruler in the kingdom of heaven. That's going to be our king and our anointed one. Verse 26, and I'm almost done. I'm going to read the 28. Moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them, and I will place them and multiply them, and will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore. My tabernacle also shall be with them. Yea, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And the heathen shall know, right? And the heathen shall know that I, the Lord, do sanctify Israel. Right, brother? Does that say the Gentiles? Does that say the other nations? Somebody
Saint.
show me where he gonna sanctify Edom in the Bible, right? And the heathen shall know that I, the Lord, do sanctify Israel, when my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forevermore. Right? And the Lord gonna come and save us from this land, man. He gonna come and save us from this polluted land of the blood of our forefathers, man. He gonna come and save us from this persecution that we're going through, man. Our brothers being shot down on the streets with last hired, first fired, and we celebrating damn Thanksgiving, man. Right? The Lord gonna he gonna come and save us from it, man. Save us from being ignorant to Satan's devices, man. Save us from being uh Negroes and niggas, man. Are y'all not tired of being called Negroes and niggas, man? Going to a job where you see black African American, right now you just got to put other. They don't put Israelites on there, right? Why don't they put Israelite on there? Because they don't want you to know who you are. They want you to keep thinking you're a Negro. If you keep thinking you're a Negro, you're gonna act like a damn Negro, right? So hey, with that being said, brother, unless you got something else, right? You got something else you want to bring up?
Nah, you good. You got it.
Right. And with that, right, you got to come out of your ways, right? You come out of your sins, right? Repent, keep the commandments, right? Stop celebrating Thanksgiving. Stop celebrating the death of your forefathers. Look into your history, like the brother said, right? Don't just do things, right, according to the other nations. Don't just do things because you were raised that way. Hey, look into it and see why you do that, right? Understand why you do things, man, right? You have to have a level of understanding now as to you want to know what you're doing before you do it, right? But with that, hey, keep the commandments, stay strong in the faith, right? Keep Christ as your number one, right? Hey, keep these commandments, man. So with that, we say shalom. I'm Brother
Shalom.
Benaiah,
Brother Ananias.
right? And we
We
say
say
shalom.
shalom.